Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like she was negotiating a contract, not talking to her husband. If you want intimacy, she said, it has to be on my terms now. My body is my brand. That word, brand, hit harder than anything she'd ever thrown at me. We were sitting in a Starbucks, her iPhone flat on the table, screen glowing with notifications. Her followers were more alive to her than I was. She stirred her drink, calm, rehearsed, like this wasn't a bomb she'd just dropped. Maya had built a following online. Photos, short clips, that half smile she knew could stop traffic. I used to admire her confidence. Now it felt like performance art I'd accidentally funded. She called it content. I called it confession in slow motion. At first, she said it was just modeling. Then influencer work. Then she joined a platform with paid subscribers. It's harmless, she said, just a business. Like OnlyFans, but more professional. I didn't even ask who the investor was. The one who paid for her new lighting setup and whispered compliments that came attached to wire transfers. That night, I came home from Tesla later than usual. She was filming in the living room. Ring lights. Outfits from Amazon still in boxes on the couch. When I walked in, she turned off the camera, not because she was embarrassed, but because she didn't need me in the frame. You knew what I was when you married me, she said, smiling without looking at me. No, I didn't. I married a woman, not a username. She set her rules. No touching on weekdays. No unplanned photos. No questions about subscribers. It's professional, she repeated. Like a mantra. Like she was convincing herself. I didn't argue. Logic doesn't win against validation. So I sat there, silent, watching her scroll through comments that sounded like worship. She read one out loud and laughed. You should be grateful, she said. This is how people make money now. That was the moment I went quiet for good. Something in me switched off. The part that tried to understand her, defend her, save her from herself. I looked at her glowing in ring light reflection and realized she wasn't mine anymore. She was public property. And I decided I would stop being part of the audience. It started small, the first crack in the system. A coworker from Tesla, Ryan, mentioned seeing Maya's name pop up on a forum. He didn't say it like gossip, more like a warning. You should check that out, man. It's not just modeling anymore. I brushed it off, pretending I didn't care. But his tone stayed in my head like static. That night, I opened one of her public pages. It was clean, curated. Then I found the link in her bio, private, paywalled, members only. I didn't click it. I didn't need to. I knew. The way she guarded her phone, how she smiled when notifications buzzed. It was all connected. I sat there in the dark, just the hum of the fridge and the glow of her MacBook left open on the counter. A folder was minimized on the screen, content_drafts. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Curiosity isn't weakness, but I already felt weak. I opened it. Thumbnails, captions, schedules, and a spreadsheet with usernames and amounts. Transactions. Some of them repeating. One of them, E. Carson, stood out. I'd seen that name before, under her posts, always leaving comments that sounded too personal to be professional. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound small. She'd built an economy out of attention, and I was just a line item she'd forgotten to update. When she came home later, laughing into her AirPods, I was still sitting at the kitchen table. She barely looked up from her phone. Working late again? She asked. I nodded. She poured a glass of wine and went upstairs. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was signal loss. Something inside me disconnected that night. I didn't confront her, didn't demand answers. I just watched. Watched how she spent hours perfecting captions, rehearsing smiles, timing uploads for engagement spikes. She called it strategy. I called it performance metrics for affection. By the time she went to bed, I'd already copied the files I needed to see. Not to expose her, just to confirm the truth. I looked at her sleeping beside me, lit faintly by the LED ring still glowing from her last shoot, and realized I wasn't in her world anymore. I was just background data. And soon, I'd delete myself from her system entirely. The proof came quietly, the way most endings do. One night, she forgot to lock her MacBook before leaving for a collab dinner. I wasn't looking for anything. But when the screen blinked awake, a message thread filled the display. Her and that same investor, E. Carson. His messages were a blend of money and validation. Hers were worse, playful, measured, rehearsed like marketing copy. "You make me feel seen," she wrote. That was my phrase. I'd said it to her 2 years ago, when she was still real, still present. Now it was just content repurposed for a paying subscriber. I scrolled through a few more messages, enough to see that this wasn't business. Trips, hotel invites, references to new material, and chemistry. Then a note about me. "He's too serious. Doesn't get the online world." I closed the laptop, careful, quiet. Logic told me to confront her, demand a truth, but logic also told me it wouldn't change anything. You can't argue with someone who treats boundaries like optional settings. When she came home, she smelled like a hotel bar, sweet perfume over something metallic. She dropped her purse on the counter and smiled at her reflection, not at me. "You're still up?" she said, surprised, almost amused. I just nodded. My mind was already somewhere else, assembling steps, deleting emotion. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the faint ping of her phone lighting up with messages. The blue glow reflected off the wall, rhythmic and endless. Each vibration was another reminder that she didn't need me to feel wanted. She'd outsourced that feeling to strangers. By morning, my decision was made. I didn't rage or break things. I opened my own laptop, logged into every shared account: Netflix, iCloud, Spotify, Wi-Fi, even the Tesla system, and started removing access one by one. It wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. Every click, every revoked permission, felt like taking a breath after holding it for too long. When she woke up and reached for her phone, the Wi-Fi was gone. So was I? No explanation, no goodbye. Just silence. She had built her life around being watched. So I gave her the one thing she couldn't monetize: absence. When I disappeared, I didn't drive away or make a scene. I just turned myself off. My phone, my accounts, everything connected to her world went dark. I shut down the shared Wi-Fi, removed her profile from every app we'd ever logged into, and erased the family folder in iCloud that once held vacations, birthdays, quiet Sunday mornings that now felt like someone else's life. It wasn't destruction, it was deletion. The silence came fast. She tried calling. The phone rang once and went to voicemail. Then came the texts, first confused, then angry, then desperate. "Why are you doing this? Can we talk? Please." Each message marked delivered. None of them read. That little gray bubble became my shield. She had turned affection into engagement metrics. I was just returning the favor, removing her access. For the first time in months, I felt air move in my chest. I drove my Tesla with no destination, no GPS, no notifications. Just the road and the soft hum of the motor. I stopped at a Waffle House off the highway, a place so far from her curated life it might as well have been another planet. The waitress poured coffee without asking. No hashtags, no ring lights, no eyes watching. Just silence and the smell of burnt toast. Somewhere back home, she was probably refreshing feeds, checking messages, trying to locate me through old tags or GPS logs. But I'd wiped everything. To her, I'd vanished. To me, I'd rebooted. I didn't block her. I didn't need to. Absence hurts more when it's quiet and permanent. That night, as I sat in my car outside the diner, I opened my notes app and typed one sentence: "You can't sell intimacy and still expect devotion." Then I locked the screen and leaned back, feeling the weight of the decision settle into something colder, sharper. I hadn't left her to make her feel small. I'd left because staying had made me invisible. And sometimes, disappearing isn't running away. It's reclaiming bandwidth that was never respected in the first place. Distance has a strange way of revealing things. When you step out of the noise, patterns become visible. I hadn't planned on doing anything to the man she'd been messaging, but silence gives you time to think, and I had plenty of that now. I still had access to her old backup folders, the ones synced automatically from her MacBook before I removed her from the cloud. Among them were screenshots, contracts, wire receipts, proof of her investor's real business. He wasn't just paying for collabs. He was financing multiple creators, writing them off as marketing expenses through his tech firm. It was a network of attention laundering. I didn't send it to her, didn't threaten to expose him. That would have made me part of the game she thrived on, drama for clicks. Instead, I sent an anonymous email to his company's compliance department, attached the files, and closed the tab. No trace, no name. Just data returning to its rightful place. A week later, the first headline appeared online: Private investor under review for digital misconduct. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt clean. Maya must have seen it too. She posted vague stories on Instagram, black screens, sad quotes, her usual performance of pain. But her audience could tell something was off. Comments shifted from admiration to speculation. What happened? Is this about that guy? You okay? The engagement she worshipped was turning into exposure, and I didn't have to lift a finger. At work, I stayed quiet. I coded, reviewed, built clean systems that didn't lie. My coworkers thought I was just focused. Maybe I was. The chaos had stopped following me because I'd stopped feeding it. One night, parked outside that same Waffle House, I checked her profile again out of curiosity. Her latest post had only a fraction of the usual likes. The captions felt forced, the light gone from her eyes. She was losing her audience, and she knew it. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just detachment. I hadn't taken her world down. I'd simply stopped holding it up. The social collapse came faster than I expected. One morning, my coworker sent me a link without comment. It was Maya, trending for all the wrong reasons. Someone had leaked screenshots, messages between her and several investors, edited just enough to spark outrage, but real enough to end her credibility. Her followers turned overnight. The comments that once worshipped her were now dissecting her like an exhibit. She'd built her fame on transparency, and now she was drowning in it. I didn't watch the whole clip, just enough to see her face when the camera caught her off guard. No lighting, no filter, just raw panic under a thin layer of denial. She tried to explain it away, saying she'd been emotionally manipulated, that it was all taken out of context. But the internet doesn't forgive weakness, especially from someone who thrived on control. Her brand deals vanished within days. The companies that once lined up to work with her started deleting her photos. Even the other influencers avoided her name, afraid of guilt by association. She went live one night, eyes red, voice trembling. "People don't understand how cruel this world is," she said. But this time, there was no sympathy, just silence. I didn't reach out. I couldn't. This wasn't revenge, it was balance. Every digital empire built on illusion eventually collapses under the weight of reality. I just happened to step aside before the fall. At work, people whispered, thinking I hadn't seen it. But I had, and I'd already moved past it. I was back to focusing on clean code, clean systems, things that made sense. Still, late at night, I caught myself wondering what she looked like without the audience. Was she sitting in that same apartment surrounded by unopened Amazon boxes and ring lights she no longer needed? Was she replaying the same moments, realizing the applause had been the only thing keeping her upright? She once said people couldn't live without connection. I was learning the opposite. Disconnection, when chosen, could be the purest form of peace. Weeks passed before she tried to find me. I started seeing her name pop up again, this time in smaller corners of the internet, not the glossy world she used to rule. She had stopped posting polished photos and started writing long captions about healing, about reconnecting with real life. The irony didn't escape me. You can't reconnect through the same lens that destroyed you. One evening, while I was leaving the office, I saw an unread message in the old inbox I rarely used. It was from her. No subject line, no greeting, just a single sentence. I didn't know silence could hurt this much. I didn't respond. The old me would have. He would have analyzed every word, tried to save her again. But that version of me was gone, buried somewhere between her followers and her filters. That night, I drove past the apartment we used to share. The lights were still on, but the blinds were drawn. Through a gap, I saw her silhouette pacing. Even from a distance, I could tell she was talking to someone, probably another apology video or podcast interview, still trying to control the narrative. But the audience had moved on. The comments were now pity disguised as advice. Nothing is lonelier than losing an audience that once adored you. I parked for a moment, engine running, headlights off. I didn't feel hate, just distance, like watching a memory play out on a muted screen. The woman inside that apartment wasn't my wife anymore. She was the echo of a person who once believed that attention was love. When I left, I didn't look back. I drove until the lights of the city disappeared, stopping again at that same Waffle House that had become my reset point. The waitress recognized me now, always pouring coffee before I asked. She said, "You look lighter these days." I just nodded. She didn't know how true that was. Maya had spent years building a world that revolved around being seen. I was finally learning how to exist in one where I didn't need to be. She found me 2 months later. Not in person, but through a message that somehow slipped past my filters. "I don't want forgiveness," she wrote. "I just want to understand how you stopped caring." That line stayed with me for hours. Not because I felt guilt, but because she still didn't get it. She thought indifference was something that happened overnight. But indifference is built, one disappointment at a time, until you finally stop checking for signs of life in something that's already dead. When she finally showed up, it wasn't dramatic. I was sitting outside a Tesla service center, waiting for my car, when she walked up. No makeup, no camera, just a tired version of herself. She said my name softly, like testing if it still had power. It didn't. She started explaining, fast, words spilling out like she was performing again. I lost everything. The sponsors, the followers, even my friends turned their backs. I just wanted to feel in control for once. I listened, but not out of sympathy. More like watching someone describe a storm they started. She said, "You disappeared without saying a word. Do you know what that did to me?" I almost smiled at the irony. The woman who used silence as punishment finally learning how it felt. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, just done. "You made intimacy conditional," I said. So I removed myself from the contract. Her eyes filled with something between pain and realization. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. No defense, no manipulation. Just stillness. She asked if there was any chance of rebuilding, but even she didn't sound convinced. I told her rebuilding only works when both people are standing on solid ground. She'd spent years building hers out of pixels. When I left, she stayed sitting on the curb, staring at her reflection in the car window, like she didn't recognize the person looking back. That was the last image I had of her. Unfiltered, unguarded, undone. Driving away, I realized something simple. Sometimes closure doesn't come from words. It comes from silence that no longer feels heavy. After that day, she tried a few more times to reach me. Emails, short messages, even a handwritten note left at the reception desk at work. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to say. Words had been her weapon, her mask, her business model. Mine was silence, and it worked better than anything I could have said. I watched from a distance as her life kept shrinking. She started taking small freelance jobs, posting motivational quotes to an audience that barely existed anymore. Her comments were empty, just bots and spam now. The people who once flooded her with validation had moved on to someone younger, louder, shinier. That's the rule of her world. Attention has no loyalty. One night, out of habit, I checked her profile again. She'd posted a photo of an empty studio, captioned, "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find who you were." It got less than 50 likes. I didn't feel pity. I felt distance, clean and absolute. She was learning the same lesson I had, but in reverse. I'd found peace in being unseen. She was being destroyed by it. At work, life was stable, predictable. I'd started mentoring younger engineers, people who still believed systems could be perfect if designed right. I didn't tell them the truth, that even the cleanest code can fail if someone keeps rewriting the rules. I'd learned that lesson outside the office, the hard way. Sometimes, when I drove at night, I'd pass by the Waffle House again. The neon sign buzzing in the dark, the smell of coffee, the same waitress with her tired smile. She didn't ask questions anymore. She just brought coffee and left me with my thoughts. Maya had lost everything that made her visible, and in doing so, she finally became real. But by then, real was too late. The space between us wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. She once said she wanted to feel infinite. I think she finally did, just not in the way she imagined. Infinite loneliness in a world that used to echo her name. The last time I saw her was by accident. I was at a small grocery store one evening, the kind of quiet place where no one looks up from their own world. She was standing in line ahead of me, holding a basket with a few essentials. No designer bags, no cameras, no glow. Just a woman buying her own dinner. She didn't notice me at first, not until she reached for her wallet and our eyes met. For a second, everything stopped. The noise, the background music, the movement of people around us. Just silence. She looked different. Smaller somehow, softer. The confidence she used to wear like armor was gone. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but hesitated. There was no script this time, no performance to hide behind. Only honesty, raw and quiet. She finally said, "You really left, didn't you?" I nodded. She blinked hard, holding back whatever emotion was left. "I thought you'd come back when things calmed down." I told her calmly. "I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected." The words came out steady, without heat. She looked down, maybe realizing that was the real end. Not when I left, but when I stopped needing her to understand why. At the register, she paid and left without another word. I watched her walk out, her reflection fading in the glass door like the last frame of an old video. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, sadness, or nostalgia, just peace. I drove home with the windows down. No music, no destination. The world felt bigger now, quieter. My Tesla hummed beneath me like a reminder of movement, not escape. Later that night, I stopped at the Waffle House again. The waitress smiled, poured the usual coffee. Outside, the neon light flickered across the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt entirely present. People think closure comes from confrontation. It doesn't. It comes from understanding that some chapters don't end with noise, they end in silence. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop showing up. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.